A few weeks ago, I published a film on this channel all about Lancashire and the struggles this county seems to have attracting tourists to the area. I hit publish, went out for a walk the next day, and little did I realise just how much attention this film was going to get. Before long, I was getting notification after notification from you guys sharing your comments, your thoughts, your feedback, and it was really interesting reading through everyone's insights. The truth is, it really made me stop and think. There were some brilliant insights shared, lots of different perspectives, and plenty of passion for this county that we call home. So today I thought I'd sit down and respond to a bunch of you directly. So pop the kettle on, get comfortable, let's have a chat, shall we? I think the first thing I want to focus on is this negativity around Lancashire being overwhelmed by tourists. And I do get it, like I mentioned the Lake District, the Peak District, the Dales, these guys attract millions of people. And so naturally, Lancastrians don't want that for their places. They don't want to be flooded by tourists. But the reality is, tourism is ultimately what keeps the economy going. It's going to attract investment to the area. And so we do need tourism for people to stay in jobs, right? So it's only natural for someone like me who works with a lot of small businesses to want to help them attract more customers. For example, we've got Let's Go Souls here. They said, maybe just save Lancashire from the tourists. It doesn't need to be overwhelmed. It does need to be protected. We've also got Paul here. He said, the locals are going to love you, aren't they? I live in the Lake District and never go there walking. Way too many people. Then there's Five Snare Drum. They said, people don't want it sharing, so you make a video. Cheers. I get it, I do get it. And then lastly, we've got Michael here. He says, shush, don't tell them how beautiful the Trafford Bowland is. I used to love walking there. I could walk for hours and not see another person. It was heaven. If it was just all about keeping things to ourselves, keeping hush-hush and keeping secrets, then great. Let's keep Lancashire to ourselves. Let everyone think outside of the county that it's rubbish here and let them go straight to the lakes. That's fine. But like I said before, I do believe that tourism is a vital part of our economy. And so whilst I would love from a personal perspective to just head out on a walk and not see a soul, the truth is if I had to bump into 5 or 6 people that have been attracted through, social media and basically through word of mouth, people talking about Lancashire to them, encouraging them to visit, then I could put up with that. Yes, I don't want it to be like the Lake District. I don't want to have millions of people struggling to park. That's not fun. But to just encourage a few more visitors, that can't be a bad thing. So whilst I really appreciate all these comments, and I get it, I get the negativity around, why would we want more people visiting and sharing Lancashire? The reality is we do need it. For example, we've got Killer Nat here who says, the problem with Lancashire is it doesn't get anywhere near as much funding as other counties. Many spots in Lancashire have been in decline since mill jobs dried up. Then you've got this other person here who says, I was the MD of Lancashire Tourism. The county council and local authorities are just not interested in spending money on tourism. It doesn't buy votes. Now, they might be lying, I don't know. We don't know if they were Lancashire Tourism MD, but I do think they're on the right lines here. If there's more demand put on an area, so you've got more visitors flooding an area, it's only natural that the locals will want help to handle this demand. So they're going to need investment from the council to improve its infrastructure, whether that's the roads, the parking, offering other facilities, toilet facilities, things like this, accessibility, so they can cater for more varied audiences. Yes, you're always going to get idiots that won't follow the rules. They won't use the car parks. They're going to try and park on country lane bends. You're always going to get that wherever you go. But I do think with more tourists visiting areas, it will naturally put pressure on the councils to invest. I suppose this is a really good example of a location that's received some sort of investment. They've funded this fantastic boardwalk, making this area way more accessible for walkers of all abilities, whereas previously it would have been an absolute bogfest down here. I think it's fantastic, but we just need more of it across the county. Of course, not everyone agrees with me. Some people just don't rate Lancashire. For example, you've got Sam here who says, Everyone has moors near them. What's special about the ones in Lancashire? You need more to offer than that. That is harsh, Sam. Yes, we've got a lot of moorland, got a lot of cracking walks in the moors, but we do have lots of nice coastal areas, some really nice towns and villages to visit, woodlands, reservoirs. There's a lot going for this place than just the moors. I love the moors, but to be honest, if you haven't been to a county, then you won't know what else is to offer, right? It's down to people like me to showcase that. And then you've got Barry here who says, the distance between the pubs is a big problem. I'm with you on that one, Barry. Of course, lots of people were sharing ideas in the comments. For example, you've got Jabu Jolly here who says, improve these areas by planting more indigenous trees and vegetation and let your native forests grow without being eaten up by sheep and overpopulated red deer. Good point, Jabu. We've also got this comment here by Come Walk With Us 123. They say Lancashire needs more trees. And I'm with you. I think it'd be great to have more trees, but not just in Lancashire, but across the board. I think especially more native and more variety, different species of trees. That'd be fantastic. And there are some surviving temperate rainforests, aren't there? Little pockets of vegetation, but the more of it we can have, the better. Now, in that last video that I made, I did ask people to share their feedback as to what they think of when they think about the Lake District. And Gareth shared a really good comment. He said, when I think of the lakes, I think waterfalls, emerald pools, and lakes. It's clean water paradise. Well, that's debatable, Gareth. But yeah, in Lancashire, which is where I'm from, I find United Utilities just love to pump sewage into the rivers and seas, making them disgusting and unsafe to swim. They call the police when you swim in their quarries and reservoirs, and I've yet to find a natural swimmable lake. So I always find myself in Yorkshire, Wales, or the lakes. I love Lancashire, but we do need to sort out our water sources and swim spots out. I think you've got a point, Gareth. I think we do struggle for wild swimming spots. You've got places like the Crookaloo, which seems to attract wild swimmers. But you're right. I mean, a lot of people do go to the lakes, especially high up in the mountains for the fairy pools and things like that. Whatever you want to call them, infinity pools. There are a lot cleaner water sources there than down by the towns and cities, especially in Lancashire, and even in the lakes. Places like Windermere, not clean. I won't be swimming in there anytime soon. And as for the quarries, well, we know that people have died and drowned in these places, especially from the cold shock of the water. So whilst it's not great that you can't swim there, you'll get called out by the police. At the same time, you don't want kids jumping in there and dying. It's not something I would ever advocate for anyway. If there was a way to create safe swimming spots where you had, I don't know, lifeguards, is that something you could imagine anytime soon? Probably not. But yeah, either way, it's an interesting point. And you're right, when I think of the lakes, I do think of waterfalls and emerald pools, especially when you get high up in the mountains. Now, one thing I did notice in the comments that has been shared not just in this film's comments, but in a lot of previous films as well, is the amount of people that are frustrated by the fact that they once lived in Lancashire, and then obviously the borders were changed back in the 70s. For example, we've got David here. He says, in 1967, I was born in Liverpool. I travelled and still live here. My birth certificate says Liverpool, Lancashire, and I still consider myself a Lancastrian. Now, it is something that I'm going to look into because, I'll be honest, until you guys shared your frustrations in the comments, it's just not something that I was aware of up until recently. So yeah, I'll keep you tuned on that one. Of course, the border changes, they work both ways, right? So whilst we lost quite a few towns and villages, we did also gain, and that meant we actually gained the Forest of Bowland. So Dunsop Bridge is now part of Lancashire, whereas before it was part of Yorkshire. And a few people did highlight that in the comments. For example, we've got Robert here who says, didn't Bowland used to be in Yorkshire before the 1974 local government reorganisation? Lake Coniston and half of Lake Windermere and the Furness Peninsula was in Lancashire. It is fascinating. Still need to get my head around why that happened. Now, whilst I did see a lot of comments that were quite negative, critical about me promoting Lancashire, there were quite a lot of you guys that were bigging it up and sharing what you love about the county. And that was great to see. For example, we've got Flying Visit here who says, I'm a Yorkshire lass, but I must say I've had the pleasure of visiting the Trafford Bowen many times. It is a very interesting and beautiful place. I'll certainly wave the flag for your county. Thank you very much, Anita. And then you've got John here who says, I'm Yorkshire born and proud, but I'm with you 100%. One of my favourite views of all is from Clitheroe Castle looking around the surrounding area, and the Trafford Bowen is outstanding. Oh, and the food is fantastic. As a Yorkie, I am very much in favour of Lancashire. Cheers, John. Another great comment here from Andy. He said, I live in Lancashire and I bloody love it. Good man, Andy. Good man. And then there was this comment here from Kat. They said, thanks for this video. I live in Lancashire and when I have visitors, I can never think of anywhere to take them. Kat, you're in the right place. Check out my other videos. I've got loads of walk suggestions. My website's got a big range of ideas as well. There's also an ebook on there where you can check out 25 things to do in Lancashire. Hopefully that helps, but it's a great place to start anyway. And then you've got Victoria who says, thanks for sharing this. I will come and visit. Yes, mission accomplished. Thanks, Victoria. Now this comment made me laugh from Mick. He says, I'm a proud Lancastrian and thanks for promoting its beauty, but quite ironic you are here plugging Yorkshire tea. Yes, hands up, that I did do that in that last film. I was drinking Taylor's. I love their tea bags, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I'd not thought that through clearly. I was there to promote Lancashire and yet I somehow got Yorkshire in there. Silly. It was really good to see people sharing their suggestions in the comments as well, places to visit in Lancashire. For example, you had Corp Clark here who says, I am now lucky enough to live 10 minutes from Rivington Pike and the reservoir, which is a wonderful place. A couple of weeks ago I went to Bentham for a weekend. That whole area is a hidden gem. Absolutely it is. And as for Rivington, yeah, I mean it's fantastic up there. The walks up to Rivington Pike, spectacular views. And whilst they don't really need more visitors to the Rivington area, it does get inundated there at the weekends. I don't think the local businesses are going to be complaining about that. They've got plenty of parking spaces, got some really good cafe options, good cakes and coffee. And so it's great to see someone local pushing their local area. Other places that were recommended in the comments were places like Nicky Nook, Stocks Reservoir in Gisborne Forest, and Silverdale. And if you're looking for any walks in those areas, definitely check out my website, lancashirelad.com. There's a ton of walk ideas on there. Something else that I don't think Lancashire gets enough awareness or credit for is its history. For example, this comment here by Hopian says, I agree entirely. It's a fantastic county and I love it. I would add as well that along with its stunning scenery, amazing food and friendly people, it also has some truly rich and deep history. Ribchester has a brilliant Roman museum showcasing Roman influence on the area, and more recent history too, with all the wonderful textile mills at the heart of the Industrial Revolution in and around Rosendale and Blackburn. Definitely somewhere that is in need of good awareness, as it has it all otherwise. Brilliant comment. It's definitely something that I would like to touch on more on this channel, the history and the things that have perhaps been forgotten in the area. So really like the comment, think it's great insight, and it's just yet again another reason for Lancashire deserving more awareness, more publicity. History. And whilst we've covered some comments here today, honestly there were way more that I could handle. It was very overwhelming actually, and I think it's kind of why I've sat on this video for a bit, because I kind of wanted to read through everyone's comments and get a good feel for what everyone was thinking before responding. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts in the comments on that last video. It is really, really appreciated. And so I do completely understand why feelings are mixed on this. On one hand, you've got some locals that just want Lancashire to stay quiet as it is, to keep our hidden corners hidden. And I do really respect that. But on the other hand, you've got plenty of you that said, we need more awareness, whether that's for our history, for our scenery, for the food, just for the economy to progress, right? Because times are tough. We need Lancashire to keep attracting tourists. And so the challenge is to find a way forward that celebrates Lancashire, shares its beauty, and brings in support without ever losing what makes it special. Progress without trashing it, right? We don't want that. And with all the passion in the comments, I think we're well on our way to keeping that conversation alive. So thanks again for sharing your thoughts. It really is appreciated. And let's keep talking about Lancashire. Let's keep bigging it up. Let's keep it a little bit more positive, and let's keep coming up with ideas to make this county better than it already is. Thanks so much for watching. And yes, this has been a completely different kind of video than what I'm used to doing. And the truth is, I didn't know how else to sit down and get this information across to discuss the different talking points without doing it in a controlled environment like this. So I hope you've enjoyed. If you've got this far, thanks so much. But I promise on the next one, we'll be back outdoors again. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.